What happens when petty power meets real power? On Apex Air Flight 7071, a senior flight attendant named Karen Aaron decided a black woman didn't look like she belonged in first class. She smirked, she blocked, she humiliated, and she called the captain to have Dr. Erin Reed thrown off the plane. But Karen made one fatal mistake. She didn't just disrespect a passenger. She disrespected the one woman holding the entire airline in the palm of her hand. What Erin did next, with a single phone call from the jet bridge, didn't just cost Karen her job. It triggered a system-wide failure that grounded every single Apex plane worldwide. The polished marble floor of the Apex Air Summit Lounge at JFK Terminal 4 reflected the anxious haste of travelers. Dr. Erin Reed, however, was an island of calm. She sat in a plush armchair, sipping mineral water, her gaze fixed on the runway, where a Boeing 777 was being prepared. This was her flight, Apex 771 to London Heathrow. Erin was exhausted. The past 72 hours had been a grueling marathon of negotiations in New York, securing a 9-figure deal for her company, Reed Avionics. Her technology, a revolutionary new logistical and safety protocol codenamed Project Ether, was set to be integrated across Apex Air's entire global fleet. She was, quite literally, the architect of their future. She was dressed for a 7-hour overnight flight, not a boardroom. A charcoal grey cashmere sweatsuit, pristine white sneakers, and a pair of simple diamond studs. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. To the discerning eye, her outfit whispered quiet, expensive comfort. To the undiscerning, she was just a black woman in sweats. When the boarding call for first class began, Erin gathered her carry-on, a well-worn leather briefcase containing proprietary hardware, and made her way to gate B24. The line was short, a slick man in a suit, a couple in matching beige linen, and then Erin. The gate agent, a woman with a plastic smile and a name tag that read Karen Aaron, scanned the suit's ticket. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Henderson." Then it was Erin's turn. She held out her phone, displaying the QR code for seat 1A. Karen Aaron didn't scan it. Her eyes flicked from Erin's face, down to her sweatsuit, and back up. "Ma'am," Karen said, her voice dripping with a saccharine condescension. "First-class boarding has just begun. General boarding will be in approximately 40 minutes. Erin kept her voice neutral, though a familiar cold knot tightened in her stomach. "I am in first class. Seat 1A. Karen's smile tightened, becoming a mask. "I'm sure you think you are, honey. But this line is for our premium passengers." She gestured over Erin's shoulder. "You'll need to wait back there." Erin didn't move. She pushed her phone closer to the scanner. "My name is Dr. Erin Reed. My seat is 1A. Please scan my ticket." With an exaggerated, theatrical sigh, Karen zapped the phone. The scanner beeped green. Approved. Karen's face soured, as if the machine itself had betrayed her. She had been so sure. The doctor title on the manifest didn't match the woman in the sweatsuit. Flustered, she snatched the small paper slip from the printer and thrust it at Erin. "Well, you'd think they'd enforce the dress code," she muttered, just loud enough for Erin to hear. Erin took the slip. She met Karen's gaze with a look as hard and clear as ice. "And you'd think they'd enforce basic professionalism. Clearly Apex is having issues all around." She walked past the fuming agent and down the jet bridge. She didn't know it, but the first shot had been fired. Karen Aaron, stinging from the rebuke, picked up the crew phone and dialed the purser on board. "Mark," she whispered, "we've got a problem in 1A. She's got a chip on her shoulder. Keep an eye on her." The first-class cabin of the 777 was an oasis of muted greys and brushed metal. Erin settled into 1A, a spacious suite at the very front of the plane. She stowed her briefcase, plugged in her noise-cancelling headphones, and closed her eyes, trying to exhale the tension from the gate. Minutes later, she felt a shadow over her. She opened her eyes. It was Karen Aaron again, flanked by a tall, thin man with a severe face. His badge read, Mark Jenkins, Purser. "Dr. Reed," Mark began, his voice smooth but devoid of warmth. "Yes?" "I'm afraid there's been a slight issue with your seating," Mark said. "Ms. Aaron at the gate tells me there was some confusion with your ticket, and our system shows a potential conflict for this seat." Aaron sighed, pulling out her phone again. "There is no conflict. Here is my boarding pass. Here is my confirmation email. Here is my Apex Diamond medallion number. I am in 1A. Karen, standing just behind Mark, chimed in. "She was very aggressive at the gate, Mark. Very hostile." "I was not," Erin stated flatly, her patience evaporating. "I was correcting her assumption that I didn't belong here." Mark held up a hand. "Now, ma'am, let's not get agitated. The fact is, we have another passenger, a Global Services member, who is also assigned to 1A. This was a blatant lie. The seat map on Erin's own app showed 1A as confirmed for her. "We're going to have to move you." "Move me where?" "There is a very comfortable seat in premium economy, 14B, Karen offered, her smirk returning. "You'll have extra legroom." This was the true insult. Not just a move, but a categorical downgrade, a public statement. "You don't belong here." The other first-class passengers were beginning to stare. The man in 2B, the one in the suit from the gate, was watching intently, a small, amused smile on his face. "I am not moving," Erin said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "I paid for this seat. My status entitles me to this seat, and I will not be relocated because you and your colleague have decided, based on nothing but my appearance, that I am a problem." Mark's facade cracked. His politeness vanished, replaced by cold authority. "Ma'am, you are currently defying a flight crew instruction. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I will be forced to notify the captain, and he will have you removed from this aircraft." "A disturbance?" Erin's voice rose, cutting through the cabin's hushed quiet. "I am causing a disturbance? I am sitting in the seat I paid for, and you are harassing me. You are threatening me. You are discriminating against me. Now please return to your duties and leave me alone." "That's it," Karen snapped. "She threatened me. I'm not safe." Mark nodded curtly. "Wait here." He disappeared into the cockpit. Erin felt a wave of adrenaline. This was escalating far beyond a simple misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, malicious power play. She could feel the eyes of the other passengers, some annoyed at the delay, some smug, none sympathetic. She was completely, utterly alone. The cockpit door opened, and Mark Jenkins returned. He was followed by a man in a crisp white pilot's uniform, his shoulders adorned with 4 gold stripes. He looked annoyed, his face set in a scowl. This was Captain Greg Harrison. "What's the problem here?" Captain Harrison barked, not even looking at Erin, but at Mark. "Captain," Mark said, his voice now laced with faux victimhood. "This passenger, Dr. Reed, is refusing a crew directive. She's in a seat that has a duplicate booking, and she has become aggressive and hostile. Karen, my flight attendant, feels physically threatened." Captain Harrison finally turned his steely gaze on Erin. He saw a woman in a sweatsuit glaring at him. He saw a problem holding up his departure. "Ma'am," the captain said, his voice a low rumble of absolute authority. "I am the captain of this aircraft. My primary responsibility is the safety and security of this flight. My crew reports that you are being disruptive and have threatened them. I don't care what your ticket says. I am ordering you to take the seat in premium economy, or you will deplane. There is no third option." Erin stood up slowly, her 5'9" frame meeting his gaze. She was a woman who designed systems that kept planes like this in the air. She understood authority, and she understood arrogance. "Captain Harrison," she said, her voice preternaturally calm, "I am going to give you one chance to correct this. I am Dr. Erin Reed of Reed Avionics. I am not a threat. I am not being disruptive. I am being discriminated against by your crew. Check your manifest again. Call your operations center. Validate my ticket. But I will not be moving from a seat I am entitled to." The captain's face turned a deep, angry red. He had expected her to crumble. "Reed Avionics? Never heard of it," he scoffed. "I don't know who you think you are, but on this plane, my word is law. You are a safety risk. Mark, call airport security. Have her removed." Karen Aaron's face was a mask of pure triumph. She stepped forward, as if to personally escort Erin out. "Ma'am, you heard the captain," Karen sneered. "Let's go." Erin looked at the captain. "You are making a career-ending mistake, Captain. You, him, and her." "Is that another threat?" Harrison bellowed. "Get her off my plane, now." Two uniformed Port Authority officers who had been waiting on the jet bridge stepped onto the aircraft. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." The humiliation was a physical force, hot and sharp. Every eye in the cabin was on her as she picked up her briefcase. She walked, head held high, out of the first-class cabin, past the smirking Karen Aaron, and into the cold, sterile tube of the jet bridge. As the aircraft door shut behind her with a heavy, final thud, Erin was left on the jet bridge with one of the officers. The other had gone back to the gate. "You need to come back to the terminal, ma'am," the officer said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Erin stopped. She turned, looking at the closed door of Flight 771. The surge of humiliation was being rapidly replaced by something else, a cold, methodical, absolute fury. "One moment," she said. "I just need to make a phone call." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, you can make your call from the terminal. We're holding up the jet bridge retraction." Erin held up a single finger, her back still to him. "This call," she said, "will not wait." She pulled out her iPhone. She didn't go to her contacts. She went to her favorites. There were only 4 numbers. Her mother, her CTO, her lawyer, and one at the top, listed simply as D. Sterling. She pressed the name. It rang once. "Erin, what a pleasant surprise. I assume you're calling from 30,000 feet to celebrate the ether deal." The voice on the other end was warm, powerful, and belonged to David Sterling, the chief executive officer of Apex Air. He had personally wooed Erin for months to get her technology. "David," Erin's voice was sharp, cutting through the ambient hum of the airport. "I'm not in the air. I'm standing on the jet bridge at JFK." The warmth in Sterling's voice vanished. "What? What's wrong? Did the flight get cancelled?" "No," Erin said. "I was just forcibly removed from Flight 711 by your captain, Gregory Harrison." There was a dead, stunned silence on the other end. What?" "Your gate agent, Karen Aaron, and your purser, Mark Jenkins, decided I didn't belong in Seat 1A. They accused me of being aggressive when I refused their offer to move me to premium economy. The captain backed his crew, said I was a safety risk, and had security escort me off the plane." "Erin," David's voice was now a low, dangerous growl. "Are you telling me—" "Yes, David. I am telling you exactly what you think I'm telling you. Your crew racially profiled me and threw me off your aircraft." The officer behind her shifted. "Ma'am." Erin ignored him. She continued, her voice like a surgeon's scalpel. David, as you know, the Ether integration is live as of today. The new system is active. My team is monitoring the rollout from our ops center. Yes, Sterling said, an awful premonition dawning. As the CEO and chief architect of Reed Avionics, I cannot, in good conscience, allow my technology, my life's work, to be used by a company that employs people who would treat any customer this way, let alone the partner who designed the very system they're flying on. Erin, don't. Wait, let me fix this. It's too late for that, David. Project Ether is suspended, effective immediately. Suspended? What does that mean, suspended? It means I am instructing my CTO to remotely revoke the master license key for the Ether system. Your entire fleet just lost its operational certification. As of now. High above the airport, in the Apex Operations Control Center, a wall of green lights suddenly turned blood red. Every single Apex flight, on the ground or preparing for departure, flashed the same code. 707 NCM, non-compliant master, flight not authorized. The entire airline, from New York to New Delhi, from London to Los Angeles, was grounded. Inside the cockpit of Flight 771, Captain Harrison was smug. He'd dealt with the problem and was now running his pre-flight checks. Ground, Apex 771, ready to push back, he said into his headset. Apex 771, hold position. The radio crackled back, sounding confused. Wait, stand by. We're showing a 707 NCM code on your aircraft. You are not clear for pushback. Harrison's blood ran cold. 707 NCM? That was the new Ether system. Ground, say again, must be a glitch in the new software. Negative, 771. It's not just you. It's the whole fleet. All Apex flights are grounded. Indefinitely. The order just came from... God, it came from the top. What the hell did you do? Before Harrison could even process this, the cockpit phone rang. It was the frantic, high-pitched voice of the JFK station manager. Greg, what did you do? The CEO is on the line. He's screaming. He says you removed a passenger, a Dr. Erin Reed. You need to get her back on that plane, right now, or we're all fired. Harrison's face went white. He looked at his co-pilot. The woman in 1A, Reed Avionics. The co-pilot's eyes widened in dawning horror. Oh my God, Greg. Erin Reed? She's the Ether architect. She owns the system. What did you do? Back on the jet bridge, the door to the plane was flung open. Captain Harrison stumbled out, his face a mask of sweaty panic. He saw Erin, phone still to her ear. Dr. Reed! Dr. Reed! He yelled, running toward her. A misunderstanding! A terrible, terrible misunderstanding! Erin held up her hand to stop him and spoke calmly into her phone. David, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Your captain is shouting at me. She watched Harrison skid to a halt, his chest heaving. Please. Dr. Reed, you must get back on the plane, he begged. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic pleading. It was a mistake. My crew. I made a mistake. A mistake? Erin replied, her voice dangerously soft. You looked me in the eye, Captain. You called me a safety risk. You had me removed. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. They told me you were hostile, he stammered, gesturing back at the plane. And you, as captain, believed them without question, without even checking your own passenger list, without a shred of due diligence. You just saw what they wanted you to see. From inside the plane, Mark Jenkins and Karen Aaron had crept to the doorway, their faces ashen. They had heard the captain's panic. They saw the red lights on the cabin control panel. They knew, in that instant, that they were ruined. David, Erin said into the phone, I'm back on the jet bridge. Yes, the captain is here. He's apologizing. She paused. No, I don't accept it. The only way I am getting on this plane is if the 3 individuals who harassed me, Karen Aaron, Mark Jenkins, and Captain Harrison, are removed. Not reassigned. Removed from my flight. Right now. The silence on the jet bridge was a vacuum, broken only by the distant, mournful wail of another jet's engines and the frantic, wheezing breaths of Captain Gregory Harrison. He stared at Erin as if she had just pulled a pin on a grenade. "You can't be serious," he whispered, his voice cracking. The man who, mere minutes ago, bellowed with the authority of a god, was now a hollow shell. You can't ground. I have to fly the plane. You're grounding your own flight. This is interference with a flight crew. That's a federal crime." Erin almost smiled. It was a cold, sharp, and humorless expression. "Interference," she repeated, her voice cutting through his panic. "You seem to be confused, Captain. You don't have a flight crew. You have 3 unemployed people standing on a jet bridge. Your authority ended the moment you abused it. My authority, it's just getting started." She held his gaze, and in that moment, he finally understood. He was a man who drove a bus. She was the woman who had built the entire highway system, the traffic lights, and the engines, and who held the master key to the ignition. He had tried to kick her off the bus. "Please," he begged, the word tearing from his throat, pathetic and raw. "Dr. Reed, Erin, please, a mistake, a terrible mistake. I'll apologize. I'll apologize to the entire plane." "You had your chance to apologize when you called me a safety risk," Erin said, unmoving. "You had your chance when you never heard of my company. You had your chance when you ordered me off this plane. Your chances are over. I was backing my crew," he stammered, a final, desperate defense. "You weren't backing your crew, Captain. You were enabling a bigot. You were validating a liar. You were leading the discrimination. And for that, you will be the first one to leave." As if summoned by her words, the radio on Harrison's shoulder, still tuned to the Apex Command frequency, crackled to life. The voice that boomed from it was not a faceless dispatcher. It was Frank Costa, the JFK station manager, and he sounded like he was chewing glass. "Captain Harrison! Greg, do you copy me? Over!" Harrison fumbled for the radio, his hand shaking. This is Harrison. I copy." "Greg, what in the God-loving hell did you do?" Costa's voice was so loud, Erin could hear every word. "I have the CEO of this company, the entire legal department, and the VP of flight operations on a conference call, and they are watching a red board that says your name is the reason this entire airline is on fire." "Frank, it was a misunderstanding. The passenger, Costa roared, "is Dr. Erin Reed, you idiot. She is Project Ether. She owns the system you just shut down. The order has come from David Sterling himself. You are relieved of command. Effective immediately, you, Purser Jenkins, and Flight Attendant Aaron are to stand down. Surrender your credentials to me on the tarmac. You are not to speak to another passenger. You are not to touch another control. You are to get off that aircraft. A replacement crew is being pulled from a delayed Chicago flight. Do you understand me, Greg? You are finished." The radio clicked into silence. The blood drained from Harrison's face. He looked at the 777, his 777, the cockpit he commanded, the power he wielded. It all evaporated, sucked out into the cold night air. He was no longer a captain. He was just Greg. Erin watched him for a beat, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she stepped past his frozen, trembling form and walked back to the open door of the aircraft. Inside, the cabin was a tomb. The first-class passengers had heard the shouting. They had seen the captain, their pilot, begging on the jet bridge. The man in 2B, Mr. Henderson, the lawyer, simply shook his head and took a slow sip of his water. He was watching a corporate execution in real time. In the galley, Mark Jenkins and Karen Aaron were huddled near the service carts. Karen was shaking, her face a mess of tears and smudged mascara. "He'll fix this, Mark, right?" she whimpered, clutching his arm. "The captain. He'll protect us. He'll tell them it was my call. He'll make it right." Mark Jenkins, the man who had been so cool, so smooth, so condescending, was pale as death. His professional veneer had cracked, revealing the terrified, weak man beneath. He pulled his arm away from her touch. "Protect us," he hissed, his voice trembling. "Don't you get it, Karen? He's the one who grounded the fleet. That wasn't the station manager on the radio. That was her. She did this." What do you mean?" "The system. The ether system. That's her. Reed Avionics. Don't you see? We didn't just kick off a passenger. We kicked off the owner. We're not just fired, Karen. We're liabilities. We're done." No. Karen began to sob, a high-pitched, gulping sound. And then they both looked up. Dr. Erin Reed was standing at the entrance to the galley, blocking the light. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The cold, quiet fury in her eyes was more terrifying than any shout. "Karen," she said. Karen Aaron flinched, then immediately dissolved. The sneer, the smirk, the power, all gone. She crumpled against the wall, her hands clasped in front of her. "Dr. Reed, please, she wept. I have a mortgage. I have kids. I have 2 kids. Please, I'll be fired. I didn't mean it. It was a mistake. I just made a mistake." Erin stared at her, her face a mask of stone. "A mistake," Erin repeated, "is spilling a passenger's drink. A mistake is forgetting the turbulence announcement. What you did was a choice, a deliberate, malicious choice." She took a step closer, and Karen shrank back. "You looked at me, and you decided I was less than you. You decided I didn't belong. You enjoyed it. You enjoyed the power you have. You smirked at the gate. You lied to your purser. You felt safe. I... You mentioned your children," Erin continued, her voice cutting. "Did you think about them when you decided to risk your entire 20-year career to humiliate a stranger? Did you think about your mortgage when you decided your petty prejudice was more important than your job? My empathy is not for you. It's for your children, who have to live with the consequences of your hatred." Erin then turned her gaze to Mark Jenkins. He was trying to straighten his tie, a pathetic, reflexive attempt to regain his lost authority. "And you," she said. Mark's hands froze. "You're worse. You're a purser, a leader. You're supposed to be the professional. You're supposed to de-escalate. But when your colleague engaged in open discrimination, you didn't stop her. You joined her. You lied. You fabricated a duplicate booking to your captain. You poisoned the well. You set your captain up for failure to protect her. You are not a leader, Mark. You are a coward." "Now, wait just a minute," Mark stammered, a flush of anger rising to his cheeks. "Our captain is waiting for you on the jet bridge," Erin finished. "You are both relieved of duty. Get your bags." She turned from the galley and stepped into the aisle. She picked up the inter-cabin handset. She pressed the button for the public address system. A soft chime echoed through the silent aircraft. Every passenger, from first class to the last row of economy, froze. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." A collective, confused gasp. This was not the captain. This was not the crew. This was the woman who had been dragged off the plane. "My name is Dr. Erin Reed. I am the CEO of Reed Avionics, the company that designed the ether flight and safety system this airline runs on. I want to personally apologize for the significant delay to your flight this evening. This was not a mechanical issue, nor was it weather. This was a critical failure in crew resource management." Her voice was calm, clear, and broadcast to every corner of the 7-Mephit-Avon. "The crew members you saw earlier, Flight Attendant Aaron, Purser Jenkins, and Captain Harrison, made a determination, based on their personal bias, that I was a safety risk. They chose to illegally remove me from this aircraft. As the chief architect of the very system that ensures your safety, I could not allow a crew this compromised, this prejudiced, and this profoundly unprofessional to be responsible for your lives at 35,000 feet. Therefore, Apex Air has removed them from service. A new, fully qualified crew is en route to the gate. We will be underway as soon as they are on board. Thank you for your patience." She hung up the phone. The cabin was dead silent, and then, in row 2B, Mr. Henderson began to, slowly and deliberately, clap. Erin turned back to the galley. Mark and Karen were frozen in horror, having heard every word broadcast to the entire plane load of passengers. "I said," Erin repeated, her voice dropping to a whisper, "get your bags and get off my plane." This was it. The long walk. Karen Aaron was first. She was a wreck. She grabbed her roller bag, sobbing hysterically, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. She stumbled into the aisle, her face a mask of raw, unfiltered humiliation. She refused to look at anyone, her eyes fixed on the floor as she all but ran past the silent first-class cabin and out the door. Mark Jenkins was next. He was white as a sheet, his body rigid with a combination of rage and terror. He walked fast, his footsteps sharp and angry. He kept his chin up, but his eyes were vacant, staring straight ahead. He would not give the passengers the satisfaction of seeing him break. But as he passed 2B, Mr. Henderson caught his eye. The lawyer didn't smirk. He just looked at Mark with a cold, profound pity, a look that said, "You absolute fool." Mark's composure cracked, and he hurried his pace, disappearing onto the jet bridge. Then there was the captain. Erin waited in the aisle. Captain Harrison had to make the final, longest walk. He had to come from the cockpit. The cockpit door hissed open. Harrison emerged, his hat in his hand. His co-pilot, First Officer Evans, stood in the doorway, his face pale. "Greg," Evans started. "Don't," Harrison snarled, snatching his bag. He stepped into the first-class cabin. He looked at Erin. His face was a twisted knot of hatred, but beneath it was a deep, bottomless well of fear. He had been a king. She had, in a single phone call, turned him into a peasant. He knew, in that moment, his career was not just paused, it was over. He began his walk, past 1A, past 2B. He went through the curtain into the premium economy cabin, then into economy. And here the passengers were not silent. The whispers started. "That's the pilot! What did he do? They fired the pilot?" Then the phones came out. Dozens of them. Passengers who had been bored and angry were now filming. They were recording the walk of shame. The bright, blue-white light of their phone screens illuminated his face, capturing his disgrace. He was no longer a figure of authority. He was content. He was a viral video in the making. "Shame on you!" someone shouted from the back. Harrison flinched as if struck. He lowered his head, his shoulders slumped, and he pushed his way through the rest of the cabin, a fallen god exiting his temple, and stumbled onto the jet bridge. The door thudded shut behind him, sealing the three of them out. The cabin was silent for a moment. Erin let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She turned to the junior flight attendant, a young woman named Jessica, who had been hiding in the rear galley. Jessica looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. "Jessica," Erin said, her voice surprisingly gentle, "the cabin is yours. Please do a check and prepare for the new crew." "Yes, ma'am," Jessica whispered, scurrying to work. Erin walked to the front, but she didn't sit down. She stopped at the open cockpit door. First Officer Evans was still standing there, staring at the empty jet bridge. "First Officer Evans," she said. He jumped. "Dr. Reed, ma'am, I want you to know. I told him I looked at the manifest. I told him who you were." Erin nodded, her face softening for the first time. "I know. I heard the CVR playback from my CTO. You tried to do your job. You are not part of this. The new captain will be here in 20 minutes. You will fly this plane to London. Just learn from this." "Yes, ma'am," Evans said, his voice thick with relief. "I will. Thank you." Erin nodded once. She turned, walked to seat 1A, and finally sat down. She buckled her seatbelt. She pulled out her phone. It buzzed with dozens of texts from David Sterling. She ignored them and hit his name on her favorites. He picked up on the first ring. "Erin, thank God, the new crew is almost there. Is it done?" "It's done," Erin said, looking out the window at the 3 tiny, pathetic figures now standing on the tarmac below, being met by the furious station manager. "They're off my plane. The aircraft is secure." Good. I'm reactivating the fleet right now. This nightmare." "No," Erin said, cutting him off. There was a silence. "No? What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, David. You can reactivate ether for this tail number, and this one only. I want First Officer Evans and the new crew to be able to fly me to London. But the rest of your fleet, all 312 of them, they stay dark. They stay on the ground. You and I have a lot more to discuss, and my price just went up." The fallout did not begin the next day. It began in the next 6 seconds. As Flight 771 finally, 6 hours and 22 minutes late, retracted its jet bridge and pushed back from the gate at JFK, the shockwaves from Dr. Erin Reed's phone call were already causing a global corporate tsunami. What Captain Harrison, Karen Arron, and Mark Jenkins had failed to understand was that their petty power play wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a multi-million-dollar breach of contract. They hadn't just insulted a passenger. They had, in the plainest terms, attacked the airline's single most valuable vendor. And the vendor had just demonstrated, in the most catastrophic way possible, that her technology was the only thing keeping Apex Air from being a billion-dollar collection of very expensive lawn ornaments. The 6 hours that 771 sat on the tarmac were the most expensive 6 hours in Apex Air's history. The 707 NCM code, non-compliant master, triggered by Erin's call, had metastasized across the entire network. At LAX, 14 flights were frozen at their gates. In Chicago O'Hare, the entire Apex terminal descended into chaos as departure boards flickered from on time to indefinitely delayed. In London, Frankfurt, and Tokyo, inbound flights that had already taken off were warned they would be landing with no ether system support, forcing pilots to revert to older, slower, and less safe manual protocols. The cost was not abstract. It was $40 million in immediate operational losses. It was 312 grounded flights. It was 48,000 stranded passengers. And as the market opened, Apex Air's stock, APX, plummeted 18% in pre-market trading, wiping out $1.2 billion in shareholder value. All because one woman in a sweatsuit was told she didn't belong. The karma that followed was not a single lightning strike. It was a slow, meticulous, and inescapable flood that drowned its victims in the consequences of their own actions. For Karen Arron, The end of her career came before her shift even officially ended. She, Mark, and Harrison were met on the jet bridge not by security, but by a man named Frank Costa, the JFK Terminal 4 station manager. Frank was a 30-year veteran of the airline industry, a man who had seen it all: engine failures, bomb scares, and 9/11. He looked at the three of them with a mixture of pure, unadulterated rage and profound disappointment. "Give them to me," he said, his voice a low gravel. He didn't need to specify. "Frank, you don't understand," Karen began, her voice already cracking into a hysterical sob. "She threatened me. She was aggressive. I was following protocol." "Protocol?" Frank snapped, his voice echoing in the small, sterile corridor. "Protocol is scanning the ticket. Protocol is believing the $15,000 seat assignment in your system. Protocol is not deciding, based on a passenger's clothing, that they're a liar. You didn't follow protocol, Karen. You followed your prejudice, and you just cost this company more money in one afternoon than you would have earned in 100 lifetimes. Your badge. Your credentials. Now." Mark Jenkins, pale and silent, unclipped his badge and handed it over. Captain Harrison, his face the color of ash, did the same. Karen was frozen, clutching her ID to her chest. "Karen," Frank warned, "don't make this worse." "It was a mistake," she shrieked. "I'll apologize. Just let me talk to her." "You are never to go near Dr. Reed again," Frank said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You are, as of this moment, on administrative leave. But let me be clear. That's just a formality. The email from corporate is already in your inbox. You're fired. For cause. You're trespassing. Now give me the badge, or I'll have the Port Authority police do it for me." Defeated, she handed it over. The three of them, stripped of their authority, were no longer crew. They were just 3 people. Frank pointed not to the crew exit, but to the public jet bridge door. "You're civilians now," he said. "You can exit with the rest of the passengers." Their walk of shame was a gauntlet. They had to walk back into the terminal, which was now a sea of angry, shouting passengers. The moment they were spotted, "That's them! That's the crew that delayed the flight!" A wave of anger followed them. People held up phones, recording their faces. They had to be escorted by 2 Port Authority officers through the terminal, their heads down, as a chorus of "Shame!" and "Fired!" followed them out to the curb. Karen's denial lasted for weeks. She received the formal termination email. Gross misconduct, violation of federal anti-discrimination statutes, reckless endangerment of corporate assets. She immediately called the flight attendants' union. Her union representative, a woman named Brenda, listened to Karen's tearful, self-serving version of events. There was a long silence on the other end. "Brenda, are you there? Are you going to fight this?" "Karen," Brenda said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "What exactly am I supposed to fight? You didn't just annoy a passenger. You didn't just have a bad day. You racially profiled, harassed, and then lied to the captain about. Karen, she's the CEO of Reed Avionics. She designed the ether system. It's like a gate agent deciding the CEO of Boeing doesn't look like he can fly a plane." "She was in a sweatsuit," Karen cried. "She could have been in a burlap sack, Karen. Her ticket was valid, and that's not even the worst part. Apex's legal team just sent us the discovery file. They have a 5-page notarized statement from the passenger in 2B, a Mr. Henderson. He's a senior partner at a white shoe law firm. He detailed everything. Your dress code comment at the gate. Your smirk. Your conversation with Mark. He states, under oath, that Dr. Reed was preternaturally calm, and that you and Mr. Jenkins were the sole aggressors." Karen's blood ran cold. "Mr. Henderson." The man in the suit. "We can't win this," Brenda continued. You weren't fired for a mistake. You were fired for a pattern of malicious behavior. Apex is claiming you are a direct and severe liability. They're not just firing you, Karen. They're making an example of you. You've lost your pension. Your flight benefits are revoked, effective immediately. If you sue, they will counter-sue you, personally, for a share of the damages. My official advice? Don't. Just go away. Karen's life unraveled. She lost her condo in Queens because she couldn't afford the mortgage. Her friends in the airline industry ghosted her. She was toxic. The story was all over the airline blogs. She was Karen of the skies, a living meme of bigotry. A year later, the hard karma had fully settled in. Karen Arron was working at a Perfume Palace kiosk in the Paramus Park Mall in New Jersey. Her job was to spritz shoppers with samples. She, who had once looked down on the world from 30,000 feet, was now on her feet for 8 hours a day, earning minimum wage. One Tuesday afternoon, a group of 4 impeccably dressed Apex flight attendants, on their layover, walked past her kiosk, laughing. One of them looked familiar. A junior attendant she had once written up for wearing the wrong shade of lipstick. The attendant saw Karen holding a bottle of Radiance. The attendant's eyes widened, a flash of recognition. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. A small, knowing, devastating smile. Then she and her friends walked on, leaving Karen Arron in a cloud of cheap perfume, burning with a shame that would never wash off. Mark Jenkins, the purser, believed he was smarter than Karen. He hadn't been overtly rude. He had been professionally dishonest. He had used the system, fabricating the duplicate booking lie, to exert his authority. He believed this subtlety would protect him. He was wrong. His administrative leave lasted exactly 12 hours. He was called to Apex headquarters for what was described as a debriefing. It was not a debriefing. It was an execution. He sat in a sterile, windowless room opposite Apex's VP of Human Resources, a man named Graves, and 2 lawyers. "Mr. Jenkins," Graves began, sliding a folder across the table. "We're here to discuss your fabrication of a safety-critical event." "Fabrication?" Mark scoffed, trying to maintain his professional poise. "I was de-escalating. The passenger was agitated. Karen felt threatened. I was backing my crew. Your job, Mr. Jenkins, is not to back your crew when they are engaging in discriminatory harassment. Your job is to lead. Your job is to de-escalate the actual problem, which was Ms. Arron's behavior. Instead, you chose to escalate. You lied to a passenger, and you lied to your captain." "I didn't lie to the captain. I told him—" "You told him," Graves interrupted, "that there was a duplicate booking. That was a lie. You told him Dr. Reed was aggressive. That was a lie, according to 4 other witnesses. But worst of all, you lied to the captain to induce him into removing a paying passenger. You abused the chain of command." Graves pressed a button on a speakerphone. A moment later, Mark heard his own voice, tinny and cold, from the cabin recording. "Captain, this passenger is refusing a crew directive. She has become aggressive and hostile." Graves shut it off. "The captain's failure is his own. Yours is, in many ways, more insidious. You set the trap. He walked into it. You were the cancer in the crew, Mr. Jenkins. You poisoned the well." Mark was fired, for cause, citing gross insubordination, passenger endangerment, and actions leading to catastrophic corporate losses. Like Karen, he was blacklisted, but for him it was worse. As a purser, he was in a smaller, more senior pool. He applied to Delta, United, and American. He received no response. He applied to international carriers, Emirates, Singapore, British Airways. He received immediate, 1-sentence rejections. His name was now flagged in the global airline database. He was uninsurable, untouchable. His entire identity was built on being the suave, sophisticated, international purser. He lived in a trendy downtown apartment, drove a leased Audi, and wore suits that cost more than most people's rent. Within 6 months, it was all gone. The car was repossessed. He was evicted. 2 years later, Mark Jenkins was working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift at an Airport Inn budget hotel near LaGuardia. His job was to check in rowdy tourists and exhausted cargo pilots. He was a ghost, haunting the periphery of the world he once ruled. The hardest karma hit on a rainy Wednesday at 3:15 a.m. A van full of a drunk bachelor party stumbled in, laughing and shouting. The groom, a large man in a Groom's Crew t-shirt, slammed his credit card on the counter. "Hurry it up, Chief," the man slurred, snapping his fingers. "We've got places to be." Mark stared at the man's hand. He remembered with a sickening lurch how Karen had snapped her fingers, how he had stood by and let her. He had been the man with the power. Now, he was chief. "Right away, sir," Mark Jenkins mumbled, his eyes fixed on the dirty linoleum floor as he reached for the keycards. "Welcome to the Airport Inn." For Captain Harrison, the fall was the furthest, the fastest, and the most public. He wasn't just fired by Apex. He was, as CEO David Sterling had promised, handed over. Apex's legal team, in a brilliant act of corporate self-preservation, immediately self-reported the incident to the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. They painted Harrison not as an employee, but as a rogue agent whose reckless abuse of command authority had jeopardized the airline. Harrison's entire defense, "I was protecting my crew. I am the ultimate authority on my aircraft. I deemed her a safety risk," crumbled under the first wave of scrutiny. He was summoned to a formal hearing with the FAA. It was not a negotiation. It was an inquisition. He sat in a cold federal building, facing 2 senior FAA investigators and an NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, psychologist. "Captain Harrison," began Investigator Jimenez, a woman with zero tolerance for ego. "Let's dispense with the formalities. We have your report. We have Apex's report. We have Dr. Reed's report. And we have the CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, audio. What we're struggling to understand is this. At what specific moment did Dr. Reed become a safety risk?" "My crew reported she was hostile," Harrison said, his voice clipped. "That's a crew coordination issue. It creates distraction. That's a safety risk." "A distraction," Jimenez repeated, her face blank. "So you didn't see her be hostile. You just took their word for it." "A captain trusts his crew." "A captain leads his crew, Captain Harrison. He doesn't blindly follow them. We have testimony from your co-pilot, First Officer Evans. He states that he advised you to check the manifest. He states he told you, 'Greg, I think that's the Erin Reed, the ether lady.' Is that true?" Harrison's blood turned to ice, his own co-pilot. He mumbled something. "I was dealing with the situation." "You were ignoring the situation," Jimenez countered. "Now, let's talk about that CVR. We have audio of Dr. Reed on the jet bridge speaking to you. Let's play it." She pressed a key. The room filled with the sound. Erin's voice. "I am Dr. Erin Reed of Reed Avionics. I am not a threat. I am not being disruptive." Harrison's voice, loud, arrogant, booming. "Reed Avionics? Never heard of it. I don't know who you think you are. But on this plane, my word is law. Get her off my plane. Now." Jimenez stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. "You never heard of it," Jimenez said, her voice dripping with contempt. You were flying a $200 million aircraft whose entire navigational and safety system was designed by the woman you were shouting at. You didn't just fail to de-escalate, Captain. You demonstrated a catastrophic lack of situational awareness. You showed zero curiosity, zero investigation, and 100% pure, unadulterated arrogance. You used your command authority, a power given to you to save lives, as a hammer to win a petty argument. The psychologist chimed in. Your profile, Captain, suggests a classic authority complex. You were presented with conflicting information, and instead of processing it, you defaulted to aggression. You were not a captain in that moment. You were a bully. The verdict was swift and brutal. Captain Gregory Harrison's commercial pilot's license was suspended indefinitely. His career as an airline pilot was over. In one 5-minute interaction, he had vaporized 30 years of experience. The ultimate karma found him 18 months later. He was broke, his reputation in tatters. He was trying to get his prop plane certification back, just so he could teach tourists at a small municipal airfield in Florida. He was in a tiny, rattling Cessna 172 with a 23-year-old instructor named Kyle. "Okay, Greg, let's try the landing again," Kyle said, sighing. "You're coming in too hot. You're flaring too late. You're still flying it like a 777. "The rudder is soft," Harrison barked, his old authority flaring up. "The controls are sloppy." Kyle banked the plane sharply, taking control. "The controls are fine, Greg. You're just a bad pilot. Now shut up, here, listen, and do it again. Or you can get out and walk." The man who had once commanded the skies, who had looked down on Dr. Erin Reed, was now 2,000 feet above a swamp, being told to shut up by a kid in cargo shorts. He shut up, and he did it again. When Dr. Erin Reed landed at Heathrow, CEO David Sterling was not in his office in New York. He was standing at the gate, 1A, waiting for her. He had taken the first available flight on another airline to be there. "Erin," he said, his face haggard. I have no words. I'm so sorry." Erin Reed looked at him, her face as calm and composed as it had been when Captain Harrison was screaming at her. "Save your apologies, David," she said, walking past him. "They're as worthless as your crew. You have a $1.2 billion hole in your stock, and your entire fleet is still grounded, save for this one aircraft. I'd say you have a lot more to worry about than my feelings." What do you want?" he asked, scrambling to keep up. "Whatever it is, it's yours. Just turn the system back on." Erin stopped in the middle of the terminal. "What I want, David, is to not be treated like a criminal when I'm trying to fly on an airline that exists, in its modern form, because of me. But since that's apparently too much to ask, we'll settle for this." She continued walking, speaking as she went. "My lawyers will be at your headquarters at 9 a.m. New York time. They will have a new contract. It's not a negotiation, it's a statement of terms. You will be paying a one-time breach of partnership fee of $50 million. Sterling flinched, but didn't argue. "Furthermore," she said, "my licensing fee for the ether system is increasing by 30%, effective immediately, for all carriers worldwide. You can explain to your competitors why their costs just went up, because your airline is staffed by bigots." "Erin, 30% is a discount, David. I should be revoking the license entirely. And finally, you will be implementing a new, mandatory, top-to-bottom bias and de-escalation training program for every single employee, from the baggage handlers to the boardroom. And my firm will be designing it and auditing it. Non-negotiable." "It's done," Sterling said immediately. "Anything. Just, please, the fleet." Erin smiled, a cold, thin smile. "The fleet will be back online when the contract is signed. Have a nice day, David. 2 weeks later, Dr. Erin Reed stood at a press conference. She announced the creation of the Ether Foundation for Women in STEM. Its seed funding? A $50 million check from Apex Air. The money would go to scholarships, mentorships, and grants for Black, Latina, and other minority women pursuing careers in aerospace, engineering, and computer science. For too long, she said to the cameras, we have been told we don't look the part. We have been told to wait our turn. We have been told we don't belong in first class, in the cockpit, or in the boardroom. This foundation is not about asking for a seat at the table. It's about building a better table. It's about funding the next generation of women who will not just design the systems, but own them. She never flew Apex Air again. She didn't need to. 6 months later, in a move that stunned the industry, Dr. Erin Reed sold Reed Avionics and the now indispensable Ether system to a defense and aerospace giant, BAE Systems, in a deal valued at $4.3 billion. Her point was made. Her work was done. The karma had been delivered, not by fate, but by her own hand. True power wasn't about the uniform you wore or the seat you were assigned. It was about knowing your value so completely that when someone tried to take it, you could, with a single phone call, take their entire world away instead. That right there is a story of hard karma. It shows us that prejudice and arrogance, especially from people in positions of power, are not just ugly, they are expensive. Karen Aaron, Mark Jenkins, and Captain Harrison thought they were just putting a difficult woman in her place. They had no idea they were poking a giant. Dr. Erin Reed taught them, and the entire airline, a lesson. Your title, your uniform, and your privilege mean nothing when you are confronted by someone who built the very system you rely on. She didn't just get an apology. She took control. She grounded the fleet, removed the problem, and forced an entire corporation to change. What do you think? Was this karma deserved? Was Erin's response too harsh, or was it exactly what was needed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories where the bully gets exactly what they have coming, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. You don't want to miss the next story. Thanks for watching.